It started with a phone call I didn't take. The kind that comes during a moment of triumph when the world seems finally aligned in your favor. I was standing on the newly poured observation deck of the Runslow Suspension Bridge, my signature project, $80 million of engineering precision hovering over a gorge known to devour mistakes. Wind whipped through the cables above me, but I barely felt it. I was finally ahead at work in life. Or so I thought. "Mr. Calder," said Brandon, my project supervisor, approaching with his usual nervous smile. Final load tests came back at 19% over spec. "We're ahead of schedule, under budget." "Good," I said, almost too flatly. I wasn't one to celebrate early. Bridges don't hold because you hope they will. Then came the buzz from my phone. I glanced at the screen, 5 missed calls. 1 message. All from Miles. "My brother." The message was short. "Call me. It's about Arya. You're not gonna like it." I didn't call him back. I chalked it up to his usual brand of melodrama. He was always emotional, especially when he needed money or attention. And Arya, my wife of 17 years, had always been patient with him. Too patient maybe, but that was her way. Kind. Attentive. Supportive. The kind of woman who said things like, "You build bridges for a living, Everett. I'll always be your anchor." But as I would soon learn, anchors can rust. And sometimes they're tied to the ones pulling you under. That night, I came home early for once. The house was silent when I stepped in, odd for a Friday. Our son, Jace, wasn't at the gaming station like he usually was. I heard faint laughter upstairs. A woman's voice, hushed but amused. Then another, deeper, familiar, male. I stood frozen in the foyer for a moment, listening. The laughter stopped. I called up casual. "Arya? Jace? I'm home early." No answer. A moment later, Arya appeared at the top of the stairs, towel around her shoulders, hair damp. "You're early," she said with a strange brightness. "Everything okay?" "Bridges ahead of schedule. Figured I'd surprise you." "You did," she said, laughing too quickly. I didn't mention the second voice I'd heard. Didn't ask why the guest room light was on. Didn't question the smell of unfamiliar cologne floating faintly through the hallway. Instead, I kissed her cheek, set down my briefcase, and told myself I was imagining things. But that night, as she slept beside me, her breathing slow and rhythmic, I listened to the wind outside our bedroom window and realized something terrifying. For the first time in years, I didn't feel safe in my own home. The next morning, I did what I always did when something didn't sit right. I reverted to routine. I left the house at 6:15 sharp, thermos in hand, earbuds in, podcasts playing something about cantilever dynamics. But the numbers didn't land the way they usually did. My mind kept circling back to the laugh I heard the night before. The way Arya's voice hitched when she saw me. The faint tremor in her hand as she wiped invisible water from her temple. I needed clarity. Not confrontation. Not yet. At the office, I buried myself in load charts and torque simulations, staying late until the only sound was the low hum of the HVAC and the metallic echo of my own doubts. Around 10:30 p.m., I unlocked my phone and listened to Miles' voicemail. "Ev, listen, I didn't want to do this over a message. But I saw her. Arya. She was with someone. And it wasn't some work meeting. I followed them. They're not being careful. I have pictures. You need to see them." I sat there, alone under the flickering fluorescent lights, staring at the paused message, my thumb hovering over the delete button. Instead, I saved it. The next night, I came home later than usual. Arya wasn't there. Jace, our 17-year-old son, was in the kitchen, heating up leftovers and glued to his phone. He barely looked up. "She at her book club again?" I asked. He shrugged. "I think so. Or maybe yoga with Danny. I dunno." Said she'd be back late. Her book club had folded months ago. I knew that. She mentioned it once and never brought it up again. Danny had moved to Denver. But Jace didn't question it. And suddenly, I wondered, did he really not notice, or had he chosen not to? I sat down across from him, watching the flicker of his screen light on his face. "How's school?" I asked. "Fine. You still working on that app with Marcus?" He nodded. "Almost done. We're pitching to investors next month." I smiled faintly. "That's good." Silence. Then his phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, smiled slightly, and angled the screen away from me. That was the moment it hit me. Not everything felt wrong. Everything was wrong. I wasn't just being lied to. I was being surrounded. And someone else, someone close, was holding the other end of the rope. I wasn't ready to accuse her. Not because I was afraid she'd deny it. Liars are trained to deny. No, I hesitated because once you rip the veil off a lie that big, there's no putting it back. You can't unhear the laughter. You can't unsee the gaps in a life you thought was solid. You just live inside the wreckage and try not to choke on the dust. But I needed the truth. Not just pieces of it. I needed it whole. Documented. Measurable. Verified like any stress point in a steel beam. So I did what I was trained to do. I started an assessment. Saturday morning, while Arya was out at what she claimed was volunteering with the animal shelter, I drove 2 hours south to meet a woman I hadn't seen in over a year, Delaney Ward. Private investigator. Ex-cop. Ex-military. And more importantly, someone who once helped me uncover financial embezzlement on a corporate build in San Jose. She greeted me with black coffee, a leather satchel full of NDAs, and that usual unreadable expression of hers. "Who's the target?" she asked, skipping pleasantries. "My wife," I said. "Possibly my son. And a man named Ezra Carr. I think he's a real estate agent." Delaney gave a slight nod and began jotting names down. "What are you looking for? Confirmation? Leverage? Or revenge?" I didn't answer immediately. I stared out the window at the barren parking lot and a grocery store across the street where some kid in a vest was collecting carts in the rain. "Truth," I finally said. "But I won't pretend I won't use it once I have it." She didn't blink. Just said, 2 weeks. You'll have eyes, ears, and logs. If they're hiding something, I'll see it. Discretion, I reminded her. My son still lives at home. If he's being used, I'll know, she finished for me. And I'll keep him out of the crosshairs if he's clean. But that was the part one couldn't admit yet. I didn't think he was clean. There'd been too many odd things lately. The late-night whispers on the phone. The times I'd find his bedroom window cracked in winter. The nervous glances when I asked simple questions. He was old enough to understand what cheating was, and smart enough to hide it if he was complicit. As I drove home, I passed a digital billboard promoting a new development, Carr Estates, redefining modern living. A smiling Ezra Carr stared down from the screen, his arms crossed, a beach house behind him and the slogan, "Trust built in," beaming beneath his face. It made my stomach tighten. He looked exactly like the kind of man Arya used to say she couldn't stand. Smug, tanned, all teeth. The kind of man who never worked overtime. Who didn't build things, just sold illusions of them. And yet, when I got home, I found one of his brochures sitting, barely hidden, under a stack of mail. The house on the cover? I'd seen it before. In a photo. In Miles' message. The one he said Arya was spotted entering. On a Tuesday. She told me she had therapy on Tuesdays. I poured myself a glass of scotch. I sat in the kitchen and watched the front door for hours. When she finally walked in at 9:46 p.m., hair tied up, wearing sneakers that looked too clean for a gym, I smiled. "How was therapy?" I asked. She paused, just for a second, then smiled back. "Enlightening," she said. We both knew what was happening, but she didn't know what I knew. Not yet. 3 days later, Delaney sent her first message. Encrypted. Sparse. Ruthless. "He's real. His name's Ezra Carr. Your wife's been at 2 of his properties in the last 10 days. Alone. With overnight bags. Surveillance footage attached." I was sitting in my office at the time, reviewing the tensile integrity reports of the final phase of the Renslow project. Numbers, steel, load-bearing algorithms, things that never lied to me. Then her email hit like a rivet gun to the ribs. I didn't click the footage right away. Instead, I stared at the subject line. Phase 1, verified contact, like she was submitting part of a military op. Which, in a way, she was. When I did open the video, there was no sound. No need for it. It showed Arya stepping out of her car at a glass-paneled beach house. The kind developers use to lure foreign investors. A man greeted her, Ezra. Tan, expensive watch, fake casual smile. He didn't kiss her, not at first. But his hand lingered on her back too long. Her body leaned in like it had muscle memory. Then, from behind her, Jace stepped out of the passenger seat. He carried a bag too, and he laughed at something Ezra said. I paused the video. I stood. I felt cold. I'd prepared for the affair. I hadn't prepared for inclusion. They weren't hiding from my son. He was part of it. I watched the rest of the footage in silence. Arya unlocked the door with a key. Ezra didn't even need to open it for her. Jace followed them in like it was routine, like he belonged there. I wanted to scream. Instead, I texted Delaney. Follow the money. Track any transfers between Arya, Ezra, and my son. I want names. I want accounts. I want to know what they're building while I'm at work. She replied instantly. Already started. But there's more. More? A company registered last month in your son's name. Partial funding from a shell account. Linked to a recent property listing, your house. The room spun for a moment. My house. The one I built from blueprints, one brick at a time. The one where I laid the flooring myself when we couldn't afford contractors. The one where I carried Arya across the threshold 17 years ago. They were planning to sell it. Behind my back. My wife. My son. Her lover. And now possibly my brother. Because the shell account? It had Miles' name on one of the filings. A man I'd once bailed out of bankruptcy. I wasn't just being betrayed. I was being dismantled. Systematically. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my study surrounded by drafts of steel supports, elevation diagrams, and budget overviews. The quiet hum of the monitor glowed in the dark and a folder sat open beside me titled Load Threshold Tests Failure Analysis. That's when I realized this wasn't about love, or lust, or even greed. It was architecture. They were building a collapse. If they pulled it off, I'd be left with nothing. House sold under market, divorce papers stacked with manipulated audio clips of our arguments, assets siphoned through a fake company in Jace's name. And I'd be painted as the bitter workaholic who emotionally abandoned his family. Arya had always known how to manipulate narrative. But she didn't understand systems. And she sure as hell didn't understand failure points. That was my world. Bridges don't fall without warning, they whisper first. A hairline crack here. A flicker of instability there. And I had just found their blueprint. There's a principle in structural engineering that rarely makes it into textbooks. You don't stop a collapse by holding up the broken beam, you do it by shifting the weight until it breaks where you want it to. And that's exactly what I intended to do. They wanted me to fall apart. Instead, I started designing the fall for them. First, I visited my attorney. Not my usual one, not the firm that handled corporate contracts or real estate disputes. No, this time I called a man named Vincent Hale, an old-school, strategic bastard who once got a Fortune 500 CEO out of a multimillion-dollar asset seizure by proving the IRS investigator had falsified a timestamp. Vincent listened carefully as I laid out the facts. I didn't tell him everything yet, just enough. When I finished, he leaned back and steepled his fingers. You have 3 objectives, he said calmly. Secure your assets. Build an airtight timeline. And make sure you're the one holding the narrative when the storm hits. That means evidence, not emotion. I'm already on it, I said. Good, he nodded. You're an engineer. Time to treat this like a structural fault, not a family matter. He handed me a folder with a list of actions: quiet asset protection, preemptive divorce draft, custodial trust for your son's future, and a list of forensic auditors he trusted. When I left his office, I wasn't Everett Calder the husband anymore. Or the father. Or the betrayed man. I was Everett Calder, licensed engineer, systematically dismantling an unstable structure. Second, I had to test how far the rot had spread. So I set a trap. The following week, I mentioned during dinner that I was considering liquidating one of our investment properties. Nothing formal, just idle chatter over reheated pasta. Arya gave a casual nod. You think now's the time? Jace barely looked up from his phone. But 2 days later, Delaney sent me a message. Ezra's firm just listed your North Oak duplex as potentially available. Arya's name was mentioned in internal communications. You never gave her power of attorney for that address. Bingo. She'd already started forging leverage. And she wasn't working alone. The next trap was more subtle. I left a draft of a fake email thread open on my home computer, written as though I'd discovered a major error in a city inspection report. A technical flaw. The kind that could shut down the entire bridge project. I made sure the wording was vague but urgent. I went for a run. Left it up. When I returned an hour later, the screen had timed out. But the activity log told me everything I needed to know. 38 minutes ago, email exported to USB. External device, SanDisk Ultra, unknown user. The only people home were Arya and Jace. They were trying to use my work now. Not just my money. My name. And if they were willing to leak confidential project data, they were more desperate than I thought. Or worse, they thought I was already beaten. That night, Delaney called. I've traced the shell company, she said. It's called Rosebrick Holdings. It has 3 co-signers, Ezra Carr, Aria Calder, and Jace Calder, listed as junior partner. It was used to purchase a home in Ezra's name last month. But guess what address they've been marketing as a pending renovation project? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Your house, she confirmed. It's already in preliminary escrow. I sat in silence for a long moment. Then I said, delay the escrow. Quietly. Use whatever back channel you need. I need more time. You planning something? I'm not planning, I said coldly. I'm building. And I was. Piece by piece. I opened a private server under a pseudonym and began uploading every document Delaney gave me. Every surveillance clip. Every bank statement. Every whisper of betrayal. I organized it like an engineering file with phases, subfolders, audit trails. Phase 1, discovery. Phase 2, isolation. Phase 3, collapse. By the time I was done, I didn't feel like a husband anymore. Or a victim. Or even a man. I felt like a fulcrum, the exact point where pressure becomes power. And soon they were going to feel it shift. Saturday, 10:42 a.m. That was the moment I walked into Ezra Carr's real estate office unannounced. The receptionist blinked, startled by my sudden appearance. Sir, do you have an appointment? I didn't answer. I simply smiled, nodded politely, and pushed past her toward the glass-walled conference room. Ezra sat inside, laughing with a man in a tailored suit and a young couple, probably another dream he was selling. He caught sight of me and the laughter died. That plastic smile froze on his face, faltered, and then he stood, extending a hand like a politician. Mr. Calder, he said with manufactured warmth. What a surprise, eh? Is it? I said calmly, not taking his hand. Because I thought realtors preferred scheduling their ambushes. He glanced at the couple, murmured something, and ushered me out of earshot. Look, if this is about the listing. It's not, I said. It's about my wife. And my son. And your shell company. And that little beach house you've been playing house in while I pour steel into the ground to finance your fantasy. Ezra's face twitched. You're upset. I get it. You don't, I said, stepping closer. Because if you did, you wouldn't be standing so damn calmly while I talk. You'd be sweating. Like your partners will be when the IRS, FBI, and state licensing board come knocking. He swallowed. That's when I dropped the envelope onto his desk, thick, heavy, stamped with legal warnings. What's this? He asked, glancing down. Phase 2, I said. Consider it an unofficial notice. Property fraud. Unauthorized resale attempt. Money laundering under corporate disguise. You've been sloppy, Ezra. And I'm not. He reached for the file, hesitated. You don't scare me, he said. No, I replied. But the federal task force that just flagged your bank transfer from Aria? They do. Then I turned to leave. But paused at the door. Oh, and one more thing, I added, not bothering to look back. Tell Aria dinner's canceled. Indefinitely. That night, the house was quiet when I returned. I found Jace in the garage, working on his laptop with blueprints sprawled across the workbench, not of a bridge, not of engineering plans. Of a luxury home layout. The new one. The one they planned to buy with money stolen from me. Looks expensive, I said, my voice calm. He jumped. Then tried to recover with the same teenage bravado he used on his mother. Just an idea. Ezra says I've got a good design instinct. Funny. He said the same to Aria. Right before he slept with her. His mouth opened, then shut. You knew. I asked. He didn't answer. I'm not going to ask you to explain yourself, I continued. Not now. But I am going to tell you this, Jace, you don't just inherit a name. You either build it or bury it. You just helped dig a grave. I left him there, jaw clenched, shame crawling across his face like a rash he couldn't scratch off. Sunday morning. I cooked breakfast. Not out of peace. Out of strategy. Because I knew Aria would come down late, confident, maybe even smug, expecting a man too tired to argue. A man she believed was still playing the fool. She walked into the kitchen at 10:18 a.m., hair pinned back, silk robe flowing, still the perfect image of control. You're up early, she said, reaching for coffee. Didn't hear you coming last night. Had some things to finalize, I replied. Legal things. That stopped her hand midair. Oh. I slid an envelope across the table. Preliminary divorce documents. Asset protections. Custody revisions. I'm just getting ahead of things. Like you like to say, smart people plan early. She stared at it like it might explode. I don't understand, she finally said. No, Aria, I said. You just never thought I would. She tried the soft approach first. Everett, it wasn't like that. It wasn't supposed to happen. It did happen, I said. While I was building a future, you were staging an exit. Then the switch, the coldness. The predator. You work 80 hours a week, Everett. You were gone. I carried this house. I raised our son. You made me invisible. And so you decided to erase me completely? I said. Sell my house. Forge my signature. Let our son register a fake company so you and your boyfriend could embezzle the money I earned. Her mouth opened. Closed. You underestimated me, I said softly. But that's the thing about engineers, Arya. We're trained to calculate collapse. She stood there, silence thick between us. I want you out by Friday, I added. I'll keep it quiet for Jace's sake. But the investigation won't stay quiet forever. And when it gets loud, I won't be the one drowning. She left the room in silence. But not before I saw it, the first real crack in her composure. Not guilt, not shame. Fear. Because for the first time she understood. The structure was failing. And I was the one pulling the supports. Friday came with surgical precision. By 9 a.m. Arya was gone, not just from the house, but from the safe illusion she'd built. Her lawyer had contacted mine. The tone was pleading, not defiant. She wanted time. She wanted negotiation. She wanted mercy. But there was no structure left to hold that. At 10:15 a.m. federal agents entered Ezra Carr's office. Quiet, professional, no sirens. Just authority, calm and irreversible. By noon, Jace's startup had been dissolved by court order, the account frozen, the listing pulled. His name would stay out of it for now. He was still a minor. Still my son. But the shame on his face when I handed him the paperwork was deeper than punishment. He didn't cry. He just whispered, I thought you'd never find out. And I told him the truth. I did find out. And you helped me know exactly what kind of man I needed to become to survive this. At 4:30 p.m., the Ranslow Bridge officially passed its final load certification. My team shook hands, slapped backs, took pictures. But I stood at the edge, watching the steel curve into the horizon, and I thought about the irony. Everyone expected me to fall apart. But they forgot what I build for a living. 1 month later, the house was sold. Officially to an international investor. Unofficially, it was placed in protective trust, transferred at full market value before Arya and Ezra could touch it. Every dollar secured. Every loophole sealed. Delaney's final report read like a crime thriller. Subject A, Arya, coordinated shell transfer via Subject B, Ezra, with Subject C, Jace, as proxy. Subject D, Miles Calder, facilitated silent escrow through preloaded offshore account connected to 3 past clients under audit. The FBI would take it from there. I wouldn't have to testify. My documentation spoke louder than I ever could. I saw Miles once after it all. He waited outside my site trailer, eyes hollow. The boat, the suits, the good life all gone. I didn't think they'd drag me under too, he said. You weren't dragged, I replied. You climbed in the raft with them. He nodded, then asked a question I'll never forget. Do you think there's anything left of me worth rebuilding? I didn't answer. I just walked past him, back into the noise and metal, into a world where integrity isn't a slogan, it's a survival requirement. Arya? She fled the state. Ezra? Facing indictments across 3 jurisdictions. Jace? He stayed. He asked to. And under one condition, I let him. Earn your name back. I made him a summer intern on the site, not in design, not in management. Manual crew. Steel washers. Night shifts. No shortcuts. Some days I caught him staring at the bridge we built. Quietly, thoughtfully. And one day he said something I'll carry forever. You built it knowing people would try to break it. I lived thinking nothing could break. I was wrong. You weren't. So here I am. Bridge completed. Marriage ended. Family reshaped. What did I lose? Trust. Time. Innocence. What did I gain? Perspective. You don't learn who you are when things go right. You learn when everything breaks. And if you're lucky or strong, you rebuild not what you had, but what should have been there in the first place. Something honest. Unshakable. And finally unbreakable.